Isaac. I'm here to talk to you about NPM. So just a quick disclaimer here. I'm going to talk about how NPM works. And NPM sort of by definition works the way that I think a package manager should work, because otherwise I would have done it differently. There's a lot of trade-offs though, right? And there's a lot of different paths you can go down. We can still be friends if you're from the Debian world or from Kiwi or whatever. Ruby Gems aficionados in here. So hands up if you have not used NPM. Great. I'm just going to skip this slide. The long and the short of it is 1.0 just landed, and there's a bunch of big changes. I'm going to tell you about some of those. Basically, the vision behind NPM, and when I started out with this, was we really wanted to just increase speed of node development and in the node community. And I think really either you can, if you want to increase speed, you can either push harder or you can reduce the friction. And whatever everybody else is doing, you should really do the other one. In 2009, there was a lot of people really pushing hard on Node. They were doing a lot of interesting things, writing all these really interesting programs and modules and stuff. And I kind of figured, I'm not going to really add much to that. So I'm going to try and make it a little bit easier to install all these things that I want to play with, that people are building. And I figured since we're starting with a clean slate, we may as well get it right. So the main sources of friction that I saw were, these four things. I'd come from Yahoo. I was actually still at Yahoo at the time and using Yinst, which is a brilliant, brilliant package manager. You should go get a job at Yahoo just to use Yinst. But you still kind of have these four sort of sources of friction here. So the first one, conflicting dependencies. This is my least favorite. You try to install something, it requires something else, that requires something else, that requires something else, and you end up in a conflict, and then you make this face, and you say this word, and you have to carefully go through and be like, okay, maybe 2.1.2 isn't going to work, but 2.1.1 still use the, oh God, shoot me now. Completely intolerable, unacceptable. The other one was inconsistent services. That was the biggest problem when Node was starting out, right? Somebody would email the mailing list, and they'd say, oh, hey, I wrote this really cool thing. It's a binding to this library. And what you do is you run make, and then you copy the file, and then you do whatever JS, and then you have a version, blah, 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 blah. No, unacceptable. This is better. You install it, then you require it, and it just works. Another thing is that I kind of found in a lot of other package managers is just a lot of excessive metadata that you have to kind of fill out. Now, sometimes you want that, right? I mean, metadata is good. It's searchable. It's kind of nice. But you can't get too carried away with it. So in NPM, I decided we were going to go with this, just this one JSON file. It was originally called npm.json, but tried to be standard-ish or whatever. There's only two required fields, name and version. Everything else is optional. There's a lot of stuff in there. Run npm help JSON. And then the last one is a publication cabal. You see this a lot in operating system package managers where it kind of makes sense. For Debian, people trust Debian packages. They trust that they're going to be stable, that they're all going to work together, that they're not going to have malware in them. So it kind of makes sense that you need permission. But I didn't want to do that work. Everybody's too busy building things to be reviewing all the other things other people are building. So we went with just an anarchic dictatorship. So it's a pretty popular mantra to kind of mention convention versus configuration, right? And say, oh, well, we prefer convention over configuration. I think convention is an awful lot like kids. It needs to grow up at its own speed, and if you have it before you're ready, it's really a bad idea. So just to put things in perspective here, right? Perl is 24 years old. It's got a master's degree. Python is 20 years old. It's, going to college, doing its thing. Ruby is, still kind of a punk, but it's almost done with high school. It got its driver's license now. Node is 2 years old. It, just learned how to walk. We don't have a lot of conventions yet, So, yeah, we're standing on top of V8 and GitHub and these other things that weren't around when those other platforms were built. It's totally impressive. It's very important. We're spamming Hacker News every day. But I mean, really, we as a community are still kind of finding our voice for what is a module and what makes sense as one package or how should I structure things. So a better idea for this was to go with, I think, to try and be a painkiller rather than a vitamin when I started out. I said, here's a pull request with a package.json. Would you please put this in your program so that I can install it and play with it. And if I said, well, can you take all this folder that you're calling modules, can you call it lib instead? And could you name your things based on the name of the class that you're defining in them? And could you no, would not fly. Now maybe we could kind of find those patterns that make sense, but at that time it just copying what Ruby or Python didn't really make sense. So I think a better model is configuration in search of convention. So just enable everything, right? Make it very configurable, make it very flexible, and then as patterns kind of arise, let's bless the popular ones, right? This is a process, it's organic, it's happening. And I think with Node 04, we kind of took some of the things that we saw as good kind of patterns to go with, and we kind of blessed a few of them. So that's why you're seeing some simplification, and it's a growing and shrinking kind of process. It's not always comfortable, but it's how it works. So today, there are almost 1,900 packages from close to 800 different active package authors. Even if you're Maroc Squires, you can't list them all in a single lunchtime event. This is the wild thing. There's about 300 new packages every month. I mean, that's crazy. And something like 2,000 updates every month. At the next NodeConf, I'm going to show you that last slide. And you're going to be like, 1,900? That was tiny. That was like 1,000. There's thousands now, Really, I can't stress this point enough. NPM is really valuable because of what all of you guys are doing with it. Everything that you guys are building and adding to it. I mean, there's this huge long tail of bindings and modules and stuff that are all much more, they add a lot of value to that package manager. So really, without everything getting put into it, it wouldn't be that great. You should give yourselves a round of applause. That's awesome. Okay, so that's kind of a little bit of the background. Here's the 50-cent tour of how it works internally. The registry where things go when you publish them is a Couch app. It's running on Iris Couch. If you want to take a look at the JSON API, that's at registry.npmjs.org. That's where the NPM client actually talks to. The HTML thing that most people know is search.npmjs.org, which is a handy way to search for modules. And of course, you can view the Couch app code or replicate out the data if you want to. Tarballs are added as attachments to the registry documents. There's one document per package, and then underneath that, there's a different version for each one. You use the add user thing to auth, and then the owner command to manage who owns what, who can publish. CouchDB is really awesome for this. I got to say, I started out using CouchDB just because Michael Rogers said, oh, I'll make a registry for you if you let me do it in Couch. I was like, I will let you do it in whatever you want. And no, it's been really great. The replication model is really nice, and the whole document and attachment model is actually really good for this kind of an application. It's very with the grain of what CouchDB does. A lot of people are using NPM inside of their own organizations. I believe I've heard rumors. I don't know if it's actually happening at Yahoo or not. Do you guys know? It is? All right, it is. Yeah, Yahoo's doing this. I know Rackspace is doing this. We have some stuff like this going on at Joyent. And it's basically you've got a couple of different things that you can put in your package JSON to prevent accidentally publishing something public. One of them is private true, which will prevent any publishing. The other one is publish config. So you can say, anytime I publish this, let's set the registry to this other place, just so I don't accidentally send it to the wrong one. So a little bit about that anarchic dictatorship. If you publish something, it's yours and you own it. This is a land grab for names. It's still kind of a land grab. There's a lot of good names that haven't yet been taken. And I really think a land grab is important because it incentivizes early adopters. And without early adopters, you don't have any adopters. So yeah, authors all admin their own stuff. It's a really simple permission scheme. Either you can write to something or you can't. And if you can write to it, you have full permissions to it. The dictatorship part, sometimes packages get abandoned. Authors go AWOL. They decide to go on vacation for 6 months and their stuff's broken and you can't get them to fix it. Or you send them a pull request and they accept it, but then they never publish it back to the registry. Occasionally, programs can be malicious or misleading or just beyond bad, like intolerably bad. I mean, it's got to be really bad to be a pain. But basically, that's my email address. I'm an admin on the server. email me if something is really a problem. Don't be creepy. The cache folder, in npm 1.0, in tilde.npm, there's registry items are all cached, and then it does e-tag caching. That's another reason why CouchDB is so great, because it's got this really, really good use of e-tags. It uses them really the way that the HTTP spec sort of intends you to use e-tags. So, new in 1.0, we've got a vastly simplified folder structure. Much smarter git ignore and npm ignore handling. It actually kind of works the way you probably always thought it did. And then we've got this global versus local installation. I want to tell you a little bit about that. People tend to either love or hate that. Raise your hand if you hate it. Anybody? Yeah. All right. Good. Somebody's going to heckle me later. That's awesome. If you haven't kind of gotten on this bandwagon yet, basically with any command you add -g or --global to run that command globally. If you don't do that, then it runs inside your own package folder. So anytime you install something, it's installing it just within your project. Global, oh, okay, thanks. Global goes in user local. Local goes in your project. Global is for putting files in the path, and local is for doing require. The global root is not in Node's require path. This is on purpose. And if you don't like it, I think you should just try it and kind of try to submit yourself to this and accept it, and you'll grow to like it. It's like Git versus SVN, right? I mean, you hated Git when you first used it. You can admit it. So yeah, packages are installed into the Node modules folder. I think I've been showing slides too long. You guys want to see some stuff? Am I still on? All right, good. What's that? Oh. Oh, yeah. Anybody follow me on Twitter? Come on. I've been bitching about this all week. All right. So what was that? You got a request? Oh, fail. Hold on a second. I can do this. Command option what? Command option control 8. Oh, yes. Thank you. That's brilliant. Okay, so what was I talking about? Oh yeah, node modules folder. So if I look here, this is actually in the npm source code. Let me go someplace a little bit more interesting. All right. Great. So now I've got a package.json in this folder, and I depend on a bunch of things. And as you can see, none of them are installed. So if I do type npm install, what it's actually doing right now, if you remember from npm 0.x, it would be spewing all kinds of crap. But what it was actually doing was going to the registry, figuring out, calculating which thing it needs to install, and then finding the right version and dropping it into the folder. And now you can see it's actually showing me the thing it installed and then the place it installed it. So you can see in this node modules folder, I basically have a folder for each one of those packages. And I mean, that's about all there is to it. Those packages are just there. It's just using Node's built-in module loader, which is why that node modules folder works like that. Oh, I'm still in background mode. Oops. Command option control 8. There we go. I was like, why is it black on white again? Great. Okay, so cycles are handled smartly, actually. So right now, it won't install anything it doesn't need to. Like if it's already found in a parent node modules folder, it won't bother to install it a second time, which is really important. So here's a few things you can put in your package.json that a lot of you probably know about, and just kind of, some of you maybe don't. The first is the scripts. It's a hash of like an event name and then a command that you run. NPM will run these scripts as nobody if you're currently root, which is an important security point. You can set the unsafe perm flag, and then that will just run it as whoever you are all the time. You can do pre and post events on each lifecycle moment. And the environment has like just all kinds of data, npm underscore config underscore every config option. If you read from process.env in your script, you'll see all kinds of stuff. The important scripts to know about, install happens when your project gets installed. Start is how you start your server. There's, I'm not sure if the other Node PaaS systems are using npm start, but we're rolling that out soonish in no.de. The test command is run by the npm test command, and then pre-publish runs before your stuff gets published. So if you have if you want to generate all your JavaScript from CoffeeScript at publish time so that people don't need CoffeeScript to run your program, that's how you would do it. Definitely include a test script. I'm going to show you something a little bit later, which is awesome, you are really going to love. And tests make you look like a grown-up. They make you look like you know what you're doing and like you care. So all of the commands in the npm, all the different commands you can run are all in npm source as lib/whatever, whatever.js. And they hang on that npm object as npm.commands.whatever. This has actually been a really interesting study in building a kind of a sprawling large program in Node, right? So, and in particular, how do you organize things like adding completion or help docs or stuff like that, or a brev support? So one thing you can actually do in npm, which I think is kind of rad, is this npm completion. Now it's hard to see at this monitor. I'm gonna bump. Oh wait, you need me to. Yeah, there we go. So what npm completion actually does, if you can run this on your laptops right now, it actually spits out a completion script. So you can pipe that to your bash RC or to your ZSHRC or whatever. There's so many different ways to assign a script to be run as a completion script, so I didn't want to sort of hard code that, but it spews out stuff that works for Z shell or bash. Oh, Keynote. There we go. If you only know a single npm command, this is definitely the one to know. So if you run it without any arguments, it sets up your local build directory. It installs all your dependencies. It runs your build script. It's pretty much the one thing that you probably need to do the most. Link is really handy if you want to make changes and then see the changes automatically without having to rerun your install every time. Basically just read the help file. If you were using link in 0.x, it changed a lot. So this re-architecture really hit that one more than most other commands. ls is important. You can do ls-g to see all your global packages, ls-p to list it in parsable format, or ls-l to list it in long format. And you can combine those flags together, but it's still MIT licensed. And we've been working on splitting out, myself and actually a couple of other people have contributed to this, splitting out some of the reusable pieces of NPM out into their own projects. So this is pretty handy. I mean, if you're writing a large command line app like NPM, nopt is a really nice option parser and validator. Semver is the thing that NPM uses to parse versions. So if you're parsing versions in Node, I would highly recommend using that same Semver library, because then you're gonna know that you always are using what NPM is using. And abrev is like the Ruby abrev module. It's so you can actually type npm inst instead of npm install, and it'll know what you meant. So this is the part where I make promises and get myself into trouble. Everything that comes after now is suspect. One thing that we're looking into with NPM 1.0 is to do binary distributions. It turns out this is really, really important for Windows, because Windows users they don't have a compiler. And it's also kind of important when you have little VMs where you want to run a little node process, or if you're talking about stuff for the Palm devices or whatever. There's a lot of places we want Node to go where there's no compiler and there's no toolchain, and even if there is a compiler and a toolchain, there's hardly any memory, so it's going to take 3 days to compile anything. So we've got this experiment. I've got this experimental feature landed in 1.0 where it'll actually, when you publish, it'll precompile a binary add-on and also publish the precompiled copy. And then at install time, it'll see if there's a precompiled copy for your architecture and your platform and the version of Node and everything. And if there's a matching copy, then it'll install that one instead. It's probably pretty broken, but it's working surprisingly well so far. I'm sure that there are issues we're going to sort of suss out over the coming months. NPAT, this is that thing with the testing. I've probably talked your ear off at some point. A lot of people in this room, I know, I get really excited about this one. But basically, so Perl has like the best distributed testing service just ever. I mean, in any language platform, it is hands down the best. When I'm not really a Perl user primarily, but when I kind of took a closer look into the cpants stuff, I mean, that's incredible. It is so good. And we need the best of everything in Node. If there's something out there that's better than what Node has for that thing, we need to make a better one of those. And so this is definitely no exception. I want to, so the idea here is if you do npm set npat true, then every time you install a package, it will also install the dev dependencies and also run all of the tests. So if there's a problem, you'll see it right away. If you want to go ahead and install it anyway, you can always just override that flag at install time. So the future part of this, that much is implemented now. The future part of this is that eventually those results are going to be uploaded up to a database along with platform information and the version of Node and what other dependencies were installed. So you as a module author can say, hey, where are my tests failing? If you see big red marks under the FreeBSD column, you'll know, hey, maybe I should check that out. NPAT will tell you when it works and when it doesn't. So if you have those NPAT reports, and you have binary distributions that can be built, right? And then we get a bunch of VMs and a bunch of different operating systems and architectures, we can have the ultimate package test integration mega engine. Like, that's what I'm calling it. Or uptime, for short. That is in all caps. That is always in all caps. NPM is in lowercase because NPM cares about you. It's very gentle. Uptime is not gentle. Uptime sends you an email that says, dude, you screwed up on this operating system. Go fix it. I think that Node needs one of these. There's these kind of clever, interesting CI things being developed, but really, we as a Node community, for the open source community, need to have the best one of those that there is. So then, at that point, then we've got the couch changes feed. We can just build everything as it's published, publish the binary distributions back into the registry, run the tests, upload the results. This is going to be awesome. So how can you help? There's basically just keep building awesome stuff with Node. Like I said, that last slide with the numbers, we need to make that number keep going up. Open source your reusable libraries as you build them. There's a lot of people doing interesting, creative things with Node now. Even if you're doing a closed source product, you can probably still open source some binding or some library that you're using. And publish that back up to the NPM registry and just try to help out with some of that future stuff if you think that there's some benefit in it for you. And in general, hang out in the IRC room and tell people how to do stuff. So that's it. My slides are on this URL. Anybody got any questions? The question is, I was wondering how that test stuff works. Is it just the exit status of the process? Primarily, yeah. So I do eventually want to do some stuff with parsing the output. And I wrote a little library called Node Tap, which is kind of like, it's more a toolkit than a library. You can kind of pick and choose bits of it so that you can output tap results from your test frameworks. I'm trying to get TJ and Alexis to use it in Expresso and Vows, respectively. Callan McMahon as well in Node Unit. And they all seem fairly receptive. They're just all busy, obviously. At some point, though, we're going to make this NPAT server actually parse the output. And if it is tap, then it will, give you much, much more granular results. Good question, thanks. So I'm going to abbreviate your question a little bit. So the question was, there's a bunch of stuff in the NPM registry that people use just because NPM is so awesome. Right. Yeah, okay. And is there any thought given to delineating which things are node modules versus which things are common JS modules or CouchDB modules or whatever? And I mean, currently you can do this, right? In your package.json file, you can specify an engines hash, which is actually really important because the Node API is still, is obviously still changing. But you can also say engines. I think there are actually a few things that are, engines narwhal or engines dojo. And there is actually a way for the Dojo Foundation has some overlap between their registry, which is using the same kind of API, and the Couch app, where they publish a reference to their registry. And then I think it's, I forget, the Promise.io, all that stuff is actually hosted on the Dojo registry, not on mine. And yeah, I mean, you can do that today, and there's really no reason not to. I mean, it's, I really believe firmly that you loosely couple as many parts of the thing that you're doing as possible, and whether that's, that works in software as well as in communities, right? There's no reason why we can't have some overlap between the Dojo Foundation and the Node group, or CouchDB modules and Node modules. Some things are going to work in both places, some things aren't. Okay, so everything that I mentioned in that not futures, that's a different thing. That's fibers. Everything I mentioned in the future section is basically geared towards that question. Like, how do I, oh, sorry. The question was, how do I pick which module I want to use? And you pick the one that has the tests that run and that work on your system and that has more dependencies on it. And we're working on kind of building those heuristics out to both help module users as well as module authors. Yeah, so the big difference, the question is why not use Optimist, why use Nopt? The big difference between the two is that Optimist, I believe, generates a help banner for you, and Nopt doesn't. Also, Nopt does option validation. So it will actually yell at you if you try to make a number thing, not a number. And I didn't need anything to generate help banners because I already have this extensive kind of help structure throughout NPM. So I just needed something to validate the options were valid. And I think I'm getting booted. Thank you, guys.